Welcome back to Terms of Service. I'm CNN tech reporter Claire Duffy. We've talked a lot on this show about how to keep your kids safe on the internet, but what about your parents? Of course, there are plenty of tech-savvy older folks, but I also often hear questions about how to keep our parents and grandparents empowered with access to technology, but also how to protect them from misinformations and scams and other internet risks. To help us out with ways to protect our parents and grandparents online, I have Tazeen Khan here with me today. She is the founder and CEO of Cyber Collective, an organization that helps make people internet street smart. Tazeen, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
So to start with, what made you want to start Cyber Collective? What were you observing in the world that led you to this work?
It was a combination of a lot of things. I think if you asked me 7 years ago if I would begin doing this work, my answer would have been probably not. But my dad had gotten hacked. One of my girlfriends got sextorted. And I realized that as a cybersecurity specialist, cyber risk expert, I had a set of information and knowledge that my community members and the people that I love did not have. And I started doing workshops out of my living room online, making content, and then one thing led to another, and here we are.
That's
7 years
amazing.
later. Yeah, thank you.
Are you willing to share a little bit about what happened to your dad?
Yeah, for sure. So my father, he is a very gregarious man, right? So the type of person that is prone to becoming addicted to Facebook type of thing, right? Like he is involved in his community, loves to get together with people. So Facebook was this place where he really, really found a connection. And for immigrants, I think as a daughter of immigrants, we're from Bangladesh, the connection to people back home. So Baba called me one day. He was like, hey, my bank account's not working. I don't know what's going on. One of your cousins asked me for money and I sent them my account information on Facebook. And he was really upset. He was really ashamed. I think that was a really big piece of it. And through the process, I was helping him out. It was also my moment to shine because my parents had absolutely no idea what I did for a living. It was
like, let me show you.
Yeah, let me show you. It's important work. And again, that shame piece was a huge part of it. So that was what really led to the impetus of me starting Cyber Collective.
What do you, just sort of stepping back a little bit, what do you find are the biggest risks for older people online?
There are a couple. I think the existential risk that exists right now is loneliness, the solitude, just being alone and wanting companionship and support. That is what, unfortunately, these scammers are relying on. They are using what we call social engineering in industry, which essentially means the art of manipulation, right? Using various tactics that lead to investment scams, romance scams, which unfortunately for people above the age of 60 are the two largest scams that get them.
And this is obviously not a challenge that's unique to older people, but I do often hear worries from people whose parents and grandparents especially are on Facebook about them being fooled by misinformation online, you know, especially now that we're in this age of AI. How big of a concern is that?
The thing about misinformation with older people, I would say in their generation, when it comes to how we vet information, they are used to vetting things through encyclopedias, libraries, right? There was a system, a process that they were taught. And then all of a sudden that process was ripped from them and it became just Google this, right? Like just look it up online. And then now we're learning recently in recent times that there's bias, all that information may not be true. And then on top of that, there is so much information that is misguided. So how do they check? How do they trust and verify? And that's not taught in schools. It's not taught at workshops. And most of these people have finished work and are likely retired. So that adds to them being more prone to misinformation.
You touched on this, but between 2020 and 2024, the number of people over 60 reporting online fraud has gone up by 4x. Why is that?
Short answer. I love this question. I'm so happy that you asked it. Short answer is COVID, which is you wouldn't put two and two together. But 2020 forced a massive digital push, right? People that were used to going to banks in person or, health appointments in person, getting support in person. Now, all of a sudden, we're pushed to telehealth. We're pushed to online banking systems. Checks have become obsolete. A lot of the systems that we have changed, and that time in 2020 forced us to implement a lot of this new technology and new ways to live our lives digitally. So that was a really, really big influence on these scams. Now, second, I mean, these scammers and people that do fraud, they professionalized even more, right? Because with 2020, with COVID, now you have this opportunity to take advantage of people that are using more digital tools that are not used to using digital tools. And then with the rise of AI, with the rise of consumer-facing AI in these tools, you know, everybody talks about, and I don't like this example often, but the Nigerian prince example that people use and whatnot. The ways that we could detect fraud was, well, the email has misspelling, or they don't speak English well on the phone. Again, that's obsolete now too.
Right.
With the support of AI. So multiple things combined have created this cesspool, let's call it, and opportunity for scammers to take advantage.
I want to talk a little bit more about how these scams work for people who might not be familiar. Will you just walk us through, we'll start with investment scam, and then I want to talk about romance scam too, but talk us through what an investment scam is.
Yes. So it's kind of what it sounds like, right? It's a scam that has to do with an opportunity related to money. All of these scams, they rely on existing systems, and then they will add something on top of it, right? So it might be a link. So it might look like a legitimate JP Morgan, Roth IRA, 401k, but it's a fraudulent link. They ask you to implement your or insert your banking information. They grab that banking information. So that's one example. The other example might be a phishing email that comes in to say, hey, your 401k, you need to update some information in there. There's some new new policy that we have at the organization, and this will be really quick. Don't worry about it. It's regular practice. We'll get on a call with you and walk you through it, because we know that this can be very overwhelming. So taking advantage of that and showing support and care. And then people will click the link, book a call, and you get on a Zoom call and you give remote access, and now you've given full access to your device. And so you're watching them do things on your computer, and then on the back end or right in front of you, they can access your bank accounts, social security, any passwords, right? Text messages even. A lot of these scams too are long cons. Unfortunately, and they will build trust. They will act like a financial representative and talk to you for weeks or months. And you're trusting, obviously you've built trust with this person on the other line. You think, okay, if you say so, that's totally okay.
Right. What about romance scams? What does that look like?
So devastating. We did a partnership at my organization with Senator Kristen Gonzalez 2 years ago, I believe, and we went to different senior communities in Queens. And we were at the Woodside housing community where seniors came, and we were chatting. When I mentioned romance scams, 99% of the people in the room had been a victim of a romance scam.
Wow. That's wild.
All but one person in that room was a victim of a romance scam. And luckily when we do a lot of these workshops, it's culturally competent, it's trauma informed, and we understand how shameful it is, how embarrassing it is. So the romance scams, what they do is exactly what it sounds like, right? Like, I think we know the terms catfishing, where they'll be on Facebook or whatever platform of choice, and they connect with somebody. They talk, go through, and it could be a regular, normal person that you just think is someone you found online to date. A lot of these seniors are comfortable with long-distance relationship. Again, they're just looking for companionship. So this one woman's experience, Magdalene, She met this man. Her husband had passed away over a decade ago, and she was not open to love. And she finally, after her friends and people in the community center was like, I found love online, try it. Like, just give it a shot. And that was her first time giving it a shot. And she met this person and they were connecting. They started talking online. They FaceTimed with one another. They had scheduled dates. I mean, there was real connection. And there was it's not like it was a bot. There was a real human on the other end. And then one day he's like, could I get some gas money? And it starts with something small. And then the next day he was like, well, my son is really going through something. And I know, I hate to ask you, but would you be okay with sending me like $700 or something? One thing led to another. She ended up losing $7,000, I believe, maybe a little under that. And he just completely ghosted her afterwards.
What impact do these scams have on people's lives? You've talked a little bit about the money, but say more about that piece of it.
I think Magdalene's story is a really big case of the way that your mental health can be absolutely shattered, and it can impact your physical health as well. There was a study done by the Stanford Center of Longevity, I think with AARP, where they studied the elderly and the impact on their physical health after being scammed online, and there was an increase in anxiety and depression. People will have PTSD from it. Many of them led to heart failure.
Wow.
So you're thinking about already vulnerable people from a health perspective as well. What do you think would happen to their mental health if they lost their life savings? And there's not really a path of restitution. So that makes it difficult as well. So there really is a silent aftermath that people are experiencing from being victims of cybercrime that impact us, I would say, mind, body, and spirit for sure.
Yeah. And how are scammers generally getting in touch with victims? It sounds from what you're saying like it could be a whole range of things: phone, email, social media.
Totally. We could look at this and compartmentalize it in a few different ways. There are the types of scammers that are the everyday scammers. It's like, hustlers that are on the streets, an individual that might be able to leverage technology just to be the jerk that they're being, right? Like anybody that would do petty theft outside perhaps would use tools to do that inside. And so that might look like, again, the romance scams, long-term cons, investment scams, et cetera. Then there is the element of more organized crime. That organized crime can come from various scamming organizations that are set up with call centers to, exploit people. And the way that they are able to exploit people is through data breaches sometimes. So I think this is really important because as a society, when there's a data breach, it's not something that we're necessarily paying attention to unless we get an email. And even if we get an email or a letter in the mail to say, like, if let's say if there's a big supermarket that you go to all the time and they send you a note or something in the mail to say, we were hacked, we're sorry. Most people read that, they're like, well, my information is out there anyway.
Right.
I don't care, right? Second thing that people normally say is like, well, I don't have anything to hide, so it doesn't matter. It's just my email. And it's just my first and last name. What happens with that information that is now available either online or on the dark web of that breach is scammers are waiting for those lists to be able to use them and take advantage. So if it is an email, if it is a password of that email as well, then they can use that to crack other passwords. And most people are still using the same passwords, unfortunately. The other piece of it, this part is really important to me, and I'm very passionate about this, is that we have zero privacy legislation on a federal level in this country. So it is the wild, wild west of data. Many of these scammers are buying legal data sets that are available online that have our personal identifiable information. And they just do a lot of high volume rinse and repeat, right? They are just scrubbing through these lists to see who has a vulnerability, who never changed their password.
Yeah.
So they're just waiting for that opportunity, and then they can access your email, your social media site, what have you.
Right. It's not like they're looking for you in particular. They're just looking for who is vulnerable based on these massive lists.
Yeah. So it's the lists, it's data breaches, data leaks, and a lack of privacy legislation.
What are the core tenets that people of any age need to know to avoid being scammed online?
There's a lot there. And I think one of them, the biggest one, is slowing down, right? As kind of simple as that sounds, that simplicity is the most important. We are living in an era where the faster the better. Convenience is meeting us, and we're just doing this and looking down at our phones at all times. So slowing down is number one. If you're getting an email or a text message from UPS and you don't have a package that you ordered and you're not expecting anything from UPS, probably shouldn't click that link. You know, if you didn't sign up for the lottery and then somebody is reaching out saying that you won the lottery, you probably didn't. The other core tenet as well is most of these scams, as sophisticated as they might be today with the help of AI, we just have to remember that there will be a lot of urgency pushing you. So if you're talking to somebody on the other end, they'll say, well, you have to do this right now. You have to send me the money right now. If you think about our systems in this country, as far as banks, government, anything is concerned, they're not doing much with urgency, right? And so you can take that as just a nod of, okay, this might be a scam. The IRS is not contacting me about paperwork that they need, right? Especially tomorrow and not urgently.
Right.
They're not calling you and saying you will go to jail tomorrow if you don't pay this $50,000 that you owe the IRS, which is a very common scam that happens. The other piece would be secrecy. Many times, if with the help desk scams, the text scams that exist, they'll say, well, just call us back. You don't bother anybody in your family. Don't worry. So when that's the case, or even if that's not the case, if you are nervous about what you're seeing online, call somebody you trust. And if you don't have anybody that you trust or somebody that you think would be able to help you, call your bank. If you're over 60, you can call the National Elder Fraud Hotline, and it's 833-FRAUD-11. And you can also call law enforcement. So I don't know how much help. It also depends on where you live, how the law enforcement there is trained, but they would at least be able to walk you through and ask you a couple questions and maybe give you a sense of safety, which is sometimes
help
all we
you
need.
think critically about what's going on.
Totally.
Yeah, that secrecy piece is so interesting. I read a story recently about somebody who almost got scammed. It was one of these, you get a call from your bank and they tell you they need to work through a problem in your account. And it wasn't until that person said, well, why don't I just come into the branch and we'll deal with this in person? And then the scammer on the phone said, no, you don't want to do that. Don't come in. We're going to handle this on the phone. And that they realized it was something that was weird was happening. What about red flags to look out for if you think your loved ones may be in a scam, may have been scammed? If people are wanting to look out for their elders, what should they be looking for?
That's a great question. I think we're still collecting a lot of information about this in conversation with people. Because of the shame element, it's hard to aggregate that data. But one thing that we have seen is that secrecy around, if you are managing your parents' estates or financial information and all of a sudden they're like, no, I can do it myself. If there's somebody that is asking for help normally and wants support normally and now they are no longer looking for help and they say no, I got a guy. Well, who's your guy?
Yeah.
Right. So that creating distance, or seeing that there is distance between you and your loved one is one element of it. The other is agitation, when you start asking questions about, what's going on with this, or if you tend to have conversations with your loved ones that are elderly about their health or appointments or something like that, and you're involved in their life, it's hard to answer that question, frankly, because everybody is different. Everybody is navigating these things differently as well. And it really depends on how involved you are with your loved one when it comes to the administrative things that have to do with their life.
Yeah. How do you recommend navigating the shame piece and having those maybe hard conversations without feeling like it's somebody's being attacked?
Yeah, it's tough, right? I think really sitting and empathizing with the person that you're talking to will help you start in a place of deep compassion. That is the most critical and most important, in my opinion, because until you really can place yourself in somebody's shoes, you might have it written all over your face. The second thing I always say is fix your face. Definitely got to fix your face. It's not my place to judge. You don't know what anybody's lived experience is or what their story is. So deep compassion, fixing your face, and coming from a place of curiosity and asking as many questions as possible and explicitly saying, hey, I care about you. I am so sorry that you went through this. There is nothing to be ashamed of. I think really care and love is the only way to combat shame, in my opinion.
Are there account settings or monitoring tools or other structures that families can put in place to help reduce risk for older people?
Yes. So one of the biggest things, and we have a lot of resources for this on our website at cybercollective.org. The Better Business Bureau also has an anti-scam website. Joanne and the team there, shout out to them. They're incredible people. But starting off with doing an audit of the systems that you have. What are the things that maybe you're not as comfortable navigating, and really doing a personal assessment of, this is what the technology I have on a daily basis that I use. What are the things that I have to navigate every day? Is it my banks? How many credit cards do I have? I use iOS, right? Or as an operating system, or I'm a Windows operating system person. And really getting an understanding of this is what the landscape of my tech stack kind of looks like. And then from there, you'll be able to identify, okay, based off of this, I'm realizing I have a lot of different accounts that are very important to me with many different passwords, and it's hard for me to keep up, so I use the same password. That will give you enough information to know that you should use a password management tool, right? How do you know which password management tool is good?
I will plug. We have a whole episode about password managers.
Perfect.
Go and listen to that.
Please, yes.
And I also love that you brought this, like, you've got a physical book, which of course, like, you would have to store this very carefully.
At home.
At home.
Don't take it anywhere.
But if you're an older person who is just not going to be comfortable using a digital password manager, like, this is a great example of how it's still possible to set secure different passwords for lots of different accounts.
Totally. And we have best practices in there. We also have a QR code that leads to a page that talks about password management tools that we recommend. The password management tools obviously is something that families can do. The other is setting up monthly chats.
Yeah.
You know, what type of messages are you getting that are scams? Have you gotten any text messages trying to get access to something that normally somebody wouldn't? Being able to have conversations of what you're experiencing on the internet, that's a very, very important part of this process. But from a technical perspective, do the audit. We have a security plan worksheet on our site as well that people can use to teach you how to do an assessment of yourself and then identify the technology that would be valuable. Because I think there's a lot of noise out there that tells you, like, you need a VPN, most of us don't need a VPN, right? Like, especially if you're at home most of the time, but you likely do need a password management tool.
Well, Tazeen, thank you so much. This was really helpful. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for caring about these topics.
Absolutely.
Yeah.